If you think about a house that's being built, it was envisioned twice. It was envisioned first in the minds of an architect, and now it's being built in physical concrete and wood and steel. Same is true for your household, your family. It has to start by being built in your own mind and then built in the lives of your children and your grandchildren. How many of us would build a house without architectural plans? You want to take some time to try to figure out how to do that.
Hi, welcome to Jeremy Pryor's podcast, or what I like to call Jeremy Pryor Unfiltered. I'm his daughter and producer, Kelsey Gall, and we are excited to bring you seasons of content all the way from Tolkien to theology, from business to family. If you like to contemplate deep philosophical ideas across a wide range of topics, you've come to the right place. Make sure you give us a follow so you don't miss out on future episodes.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. April, how you doing today?
I am doing very well. We are eagerly anticipating the arrival of our second grandchild, which is due in about 4 days.
Yes.
So we'll see. Grandchild number 1 was a week late. Jeremy's so excited to have more ruffle butts, is what he calls them.
Yes.
When they have their
those,
little fun.
what do you call those? Bloomers?
Yeah, they're little bloomers that go under their dresses.
Oh my gosh. So adorable. Yes. Anyway, so excited. All right. Well, speaking of grandchildren, we're here to talk about Abraham, guys. So I'm really excited about this podcast. So I'm going to read the beginning of chapter 4 of my new book, The Ruling Household, and just get April's take on it. Excited to talk about this one. So what I'm doing in this book is I'm trying to understand, starting from the Genesis 1:28 mandate that a family is designed to be fruitful, multiply, fill, subdue, and rule. And then all of a sudden you get examples of what that looks like that I think just haven't been taken very seriously or mined for their incredible depth of insight when it comes to family. And so we dove deep into Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, Noah, and Tower of Babel last time. And now we're talking about, finally, Abraham. Yes. This is what I've been looking
So much happens in the first 11 chapters of the Bible. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It is crazy. All right. So we're going to start with this one. It's called The Patriarch with the Longest Vision Wins. So it starts with Abram, the exalted father. All right. I've been looking forward to turning to this topic ever since starting to work on this book. In the first 11 chapters of Genesis, God primarily deals with humanity as a whole. Adam's name means humanity. So from the garden up through the reset God initiates during the time of Noah, God's actions in these stories implicate the entire human race. But as we turn to the next chapter of the story, God's strategy is shifting. He's choosing a specific family. From this point forward, we're going to learn about God and his ways through one multi-generational family line. And if you want to tell a multi-generational family story, you're going to need a patriarch. And the patriarch God chooses is named Abram. Now, Abram's name in Hebrew means exalted father. A more literal way of translating the meaning of his name is meta father, meta meaning above, and it has been increasingly used to refer to something archetypal. This is how Abram functions in the story. Abram is not the perfect model father. If he was perfect, he wouldn't be an effective archetype, since no human father is perfect. But Abram does represent a perfectly inspired description of how God interacts with fatherhood. And in an era that is losing our memory of the essence of fatherhood, we need to do a deep dive into the character of Abram, in mind for everything we can learn about God's design for the essence of fatherhood in a ruling household. So we're going to look at Abram, the exalted father. All right, so this is called a patriarch, is a father following a vision. Chapter 11 of Genesis gives us Shem's genealogy, the Semitic family, tracing the line of the firstborn male descendants of Shem until we reach Terah, who had 3 sons. We zero in on the household of Terah, who travels from the city of Ur to the city of Haran. The genealogy contains a tragedy within the line of Shem. Sarai, Abram's wife, is barren. Will this be the end of the unbroken line of Shem? There's a special irony for childlessness to strike this branch of the family, because it appears that the man whose name means exalted father will never experience what it's like to be a father. But God is about to act. Terah dies in the land of Haran, Genesis 11:32. We also read about that in Acts 7:4. And then Abram hears the voice of God. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and from your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation. And I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." Genesis 12, 1 through 3. Abram then sets out to a land he's never seen. His decision to follow a vision begins the process of transforming him from a man into a patriarch. For thousands of years, Jewish families have lifted the final Passover glass, saying, "Next year in Jerusalem," because Abram, through obedience to the voice of God, went in search of a special piece of land that would root the identity of his future descendants. There's much to unpack in these 3 verses that make up God's call to Abram. God's call contains the seeds of how to build a ruling family that can last 1,000 generations. Those themes include being captured by a long-term vision, hearing and trusting and obeying God's voice, the role of promise and blessing, supernatural protection over future generations, the role of patriarchal fame, the move from family building to nation building, and the mission of multi-generational family building to bless other families. So we're going to dig into all that stuff in this chapter. So the patriarch with the longest vision wins. That's where we're going to zero in on for this one. The difference between a father and a patriarch is a compelling multi-generational vision. Having children makes you a father, but when a father casts a vision that inspires his descendants, he becomes a patriarch. The words of this new vision begin with what historian Thomas Cahill calls 2 of the boldest words in all of literature, lech lecha, or in English, go forth. Go forth from your country and family and begin a new family, a new country. Our family makes an annual pilgrimage to Israel, and in the minute we enter Israeli airspace, I become conscious that we are now inside the vision of Abraham. No place depicts this reality better than a city in Israel called Hebron, where stands the tomb of the patriarchs. Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Leah are all buried here in the cave acquired by Abraham, whose deed to the land we have described in detail land negotiations in Genesis 23. What is most remarkable about this location is the standoff between the 2 sons of Abraham at the tomb itself, half belonging to the Jews, the descendants of Isaac, and the other half to the Arabs, the descendants of Ishmael. Only a wall separates these warring brothers, and both can look from their side into the tomb of their father. If you ever doubt the power of a patriarchal vision, go to Hebron. Historian Paul Johnson begins his book, The History of the Jews, by detailing what this remarkable city symbolizes. Quote, "The Jews are the most tenacious people in history. Hebron is there to prove it. It lies 20 miles south of Jerusalem, 3,000 feet up the Judean hills. There, in the cave of Machpelah, are the tombs of the patriarchs. Its stones are mute witness to constant strife and 4 millennia of religious and political disputes. It has been in turn a Hebrew shrine, a synagogue, a Byzantine basilica, a mosque, a Crusader church, and then a mosque again. Despite much fear and uncertainty, it has flourished." So when the historian visits Hebron today, he asks himself, where are all those people who once held this place? Where are the Canaanites? Where are the Edomites? Where are the ancient Hellenes and the Romans, the Byzantines, the Franks, the Mamluks, the Ottomans? They have vanished into time irrevocably, but the Jews are still in Hebron. Hebron is thus an example of Jewish obstinacy over 4,000 years. No race has maintained over so long a period so emotional attachment to a particular corner of the earth's surface. But none has shown so strong and persistent an instinct to migrate, such courage and skill in pulling up and replanting its roots. It is a curious fact that for more than 3/4 of their existence as a race, a majority of Jews have lived outside of the land they call their own. They do so today. Actually, that's not even true anymore. When Paul Johnson wrote this, that was true, but now a majority of Jewish people now live in Israel. Just happened.
The Family Plan Calendar is the new way to keep your family team organized. Plan your rhythms, menu, household chores, and notes for the family all in one place. Visit familyteams.com to purchase.
How did the Jews become what he calls the most tenacious people in history? How did they become the people who, in the words of Charles Krauthammer, are, quote, the only nation on the earth that inhabits the same land, bears the same name, speaks the same language, and worships the same God they did 3,000 years ago? One reason we are here to explore in depth is that their patriarch had the longest and clearest vision of any patriarch in history. Their patriarch gave rise to more patriarchs, and their patriarchal vision stacked until you have a family that, despite every effort to stop them, will continue to be fruitful, multiply, fill, subdue, and rule until the end of time. That is Abraham's legacy. So how do we do this? Here's your tool for this chapter: casting a vision for your descendants. In recent times, business thought leaders have rediscovered the power of vision. Some have even suggested that the title CEO should be rebranded as the Chief Explainer Officer. As Drift co-founder explains, quote, I think my role has been and will continue to be the Chief Explainer Officer. I would just have to keep repeating the vision or mission. Why are we here? What are we doing? A mission articulates what we are here, but a vision is a picture of where we are going. God gives Abram a fuzzy vision. He tells him there is a land out there, but he doesn't tell him exactly where that land is. Every father seeking to become a patriarch must become comfortable sharing his fuzzy vision. Writing a fuzzy vision is actually pretty easy. Take out a piece of paper, put a date at the top. This date could be 5 years, 50 years, 500 years into the future, you pick. Then you try and write a full page about what you see, about your family on that date. Remember, vision is literally seeing something, and every father sees something in the future. The farther away, the more fuzzy the vision is more likely to be until it's so blurry you can't make out any details. 25 years ago, I saw myself working on assets alongside my adult children. 20 years ago, I saw my parents and grandchildren around the same dinner table every week. 15 years ago, I saw our family putting down roots in a small walking town close to Cincinnati. 10 years ago, I saw our family training other families to become multi-generational teams on mission. 5 years ago, I saw our family forming a disciple-making community that reproduces spiritual children. By God's grace, all of these visions have happened or are happening. Sometimes we have to let visions go. That's okay. It's so much better to aim at something and then to see it as clearly as you can with the wisdom and vision you've been given. It's not okay to aim at nothing. This will blow your family apart and send them to the four winds. The reason Abraham's family kept coming back together was because their father had a God-given vision, and each generation continued to share it. And virtually every spiritual blessing that has come upon the earth ever since came through that channel of this one visionary family. So, April, what are your thoughts about that? What does that start for you?
Well, that's a lot. That's a whole chapter.
Yeah.
Or the
Well,
beginning
it's
of the
just the
chapter.
beginning. We got a long ways
Yeah.
to go. We're scratching the surface of Abraham.
Maybe lots of sub chapters in there.
Yes.
Well, I think the overarching place it takes me is just the reminder that this story is so old. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this happened around like 2091 BC or something. If I have my CC timeline cards
Yes.
in the correct order. So that's a long time ago, 4,000-ish years ago. And well, even then, even before that, with creation and just thinking about the story that God is writing and reminding myself that I am a part of something that's way bigger than me. And just like the epicness, the meta-ness of Abraham's role. And I mean, I personally am not Jewish, but just the idea that God was saying that he would like bless all the nations of the world through Abraham and his descendants, and just the ideas that Abraham inspired of, running a household. And, we know that he had 318 fighting men before he even had one child. So he was this version of a king in his time. And all of those things just give me inspiration for, seeing how, like, the way God can see across time And it helps me trust him even more because I'm like, okay, you knew about that. You did that way, way, way back then. Like I can trust you with my day to day or my husband's vision for our family right now. So that's kind of like where big picture where it takes me. And then I was thinking a lot about the dads out there who like the husbands and fathers, like if you're listening to this and you don't feel like you're naturally gifted at being a visionary, I think I do hear that from time to time. A lot of men are gifted, differently than they wouldn't classify themselves as a visionary. But I do think it's something I would really encourage you to try to press into that and just ask yourself questions that kind of like push you into that way of thinking.
Yep.
So, like maybe you're a detail person and things up close and, next year are where you're at. But think about like allow the Lord in a time of maybe prayer or something to really, start to kind of prime that pump in you where you're thinking like, when my kids graduate from high school, where do I want to be at with them relationally? Or like when my wife and I have our 25th anniversary, where could we be at even relationally, or what do we hope to have accomplished by then? Or where will we be with our kids or our business or, my job, like wherever your circumstances are. I know sometimes he can take those things and then just completely exponentially things we never even thought of. It can go way beyond where our imagination took us. But that's way better, like you said in your chapter, Jeremy, it's better than aiming at nothing.
Mm.
And I think that I'm not necessarily gifted visionary wise. And so I can relate to the men that, I'm thinking about being in the leadership position of the man and the husband and just thinking like how intimidating it could be to, being asked like, find a vision, make it out. So I just want to say, like, ask the Lord, intentionally ask Him, for ideas or ways to kind of think about this idea of having a vision for your family, what that could look like, and then be able to back it up to today and kind of how you can work towards playing that vision out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something you have to practice. And I think a lot of times maybe the fuzziness gets certain people who are more perfectionists or detail oriented, like you said, it kind of locks them up. It causes them not to be okay with just sort of painting a fuzzy picture. That's why I just like the exercise of throw a date out there and then just what do you see? Like, and it's okay. Make it sound really general, and it doesn't need to be high resolution. But the more you can do this exercise, the more you'll begin to aim at that thing. Stephen Covey famously talks about how everything is created twice. Like if you think about a house that's being built, we're looking out our window right now, and this big addition is being put on our neighbor's house. It's like it was envisioned twice. It was envisioned first in the minds of an architect, right? And now it's being built in physical concrete and wood and steel. Same is true for your household, your family. It has to start by being built in your own mind and then built in the lives of your children and your grandchildren and in the future descendants. But the problem is that, how many of us would build a house without architectural plans, right? And so you want to take some time to try to figure out how to do that. Maybe even prompts like the five capitals, like 10 years from now, what does our family look like or feel like relationally? What does it feel like spiritually? Like what's happening? What are some of the things we're celebrating? What does it feel like physically? Like what are we eating and how's our health, in those seasons? How do we take care of each other physically? How are we doing financially, right? Each of these different capitals intellectually, they help us just create buckets or categories for vision. And, you might look at a page like that and think, well, man, I don't know if any of this is going to actually happen. And I think that you need to understand that if you start to write these visionary documents, you start to take time to try to see the future, you will end up in a different place. Now, it might not look exactly like that. And again, I think it's important, even if you do start to describe a vision in high resolution, it's probably not going to happen like the way you're describing it. Those are always approximations, but they are more like a compass point that starts to point your family in a direction where you start to move that. And that's why I kind of want to give those examples. And I'm curious, April, if any of those struck you, because each of those examples, I remember 25 years ago when I started to really, for the first time, have a vision for like wanting to work alongside my adult children, just wanting that to be an option. Like if I work in a regular full-time job for a church or for a company, am I going to actually get to live an integrated life with my kids in any way? And I was really concerned about that. Like I want that to be options. Right after this call, we're going to be hanging out with, Jackson and talking about his business. Like those are things that I think it's not happening exactly the way I thought of it. It's not like we're all working in exactly the same business. There are even times where I started a business. I'm like, this is the business our family is actually going to work in. And then we ended up like losing a business or selling a business or, none of it has happened the way that I saw it, but all of it is happening in sort of in that fuzzy way, the way that I saw it. Right. And I think that a lot of times you have to just get really comfortable with the future being, you know, not really clear, but you still need it to be directional. So yeah, anything that you thought about like from our family story, like things that you've seen or that we've tried to envision, how has visionary like thinking helped us kind of move in a common direction?
Well, I want to back up to you listed, I think, seven like themes
Yeah.
that I feel like are just really good for this because, like, I'll reread a few of them. So, hearing, trusting, and obeying God's voice, the role of promise and blessing, supernatural protection over future generations, the move of family building to nation building. So, I feel like when you think about the future, you the world has us come up with a 5-year plan. Like, where do you want to be financially? How many assets do you want to have? Like, and those aren't bad things, but I think that a lot of times we're missing out on understanding how we're going to be maturing and growing in the things that are hard to articulate. Like, you don't have anything to show on paper, but it's like, wow, you've grown so much in your faith and your trust in the Lord. Or maybe you've learned how to believe more in his timing. Maybe you learn more about how to fall back on his provision. Maybe you've learned more how to like hear his voice when you're like really praying about a decision, like how to make decisions faster and more with more success on the other side of the decision. All of those things are skills that you learn, skills or like, what's another word for that? Like just a pathway, a way, just like a way of being or a way of acting or a way of responding. You're learning these things. And if you're open to growing and maturing in your faith with the Lord, then those, um, that journey that you're on can lead you to these other things. So like you're saying, like in our state 25 years ago, you were saying like, oh, I want to be able to work with my kids when they're adults. That's like, I don't even know how many kids we're going to have. Like 25 years ago, we had one, so you're kind of like, I don't know how many kids we're going to have, but I know we want more than one. And I know that at some point in my life, I want to be able to work with them. And that was like a totally new thought and just like mind blowing for us and like trying to figure out what that even means. And like you said, what you might put on paper might not actually be what happens, but the process of like hearing, trusting and obeying God's voice in making this decision next week or next year, the role of promise and the role of blessing, like understanding what those are, pressing into them, going through hard things like losing a parent or making a decision about a move or a child with a health concern. Like all of these things might feel like distractions or something, but they're actually part of the maturing process to on this journey of getting to the place where you are establishing your vision and then you're revisiting and then reestablishing and kind of redirecting and tweaking your vision.
Yeah.
Like what you hear? Be sure to leave a rating and review for this podcast wherever you use streaming.
Yeah. One of the reasons why I love getting to do this process, and my favorite thing about writing this book is how tethered it is to the scriptures. Like I'm just kind of stumbling across these things. And I think sometimes when we develop like mission vision, values for families in an abstract way, we miss out on some of these other elements you're describing, the promise and the blessing and the trust and the, it's no longer this deep interaction with the Lord that you see in a story like Abram and how he becomes Abraham, how this story unfolds. And so I just been struck like every element of the story, and the next place we're going to go, the next section is all about hearing and trusting the voice of God, because there's that what happened there and how that interacts with vision, I think is really important. I had an author once that I was friends with, and he used to always love to say, "I don't have a vision has me." And by that, he meant
Mm.
God was communicating something, giving me a picture. And there had been a few times in prayer where I will suddenly see something like really symbolic, like picture of something. And those it very rarely happens, but man, that it's so helpful to have the Holy Spirit provide this kind of like these images of what the future could look like, so that we don't have visions, the visions have us, and that God is directing us and guiding us. So yeah, I'm excited to continue down this path. We're gonna go on a long journey together. Like this is gonna be a long chapter with lots of sub points. I'm absolutely taking my time. Like there's no rush. There's no publishing date. I'm just like, I'm just working through these. And a lot of this for me is just an exercise of personally reflecting on how the book of Genesis and the scriptures describe these things. So yeah, excited to get to do this. So thanks, April, for being on the journey with me, and all you guys for listening. We've got quite a road ahead as we try to dive all the way into what is the story of Abraham hold in store for all of our families. So yeah, stay tuned. Thanks for talking.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Jeremy Pryor's podcast. Make sure you hit that follow button so you don't miss out on any future content. Follow Jeremy on Twitter and Instagram, as well as his Substack blog, all linked in the description. See you next time.